I look after Google for Education for the APAC region. And it's a great pleasure to be here speaking with you today. So over the course of this year, teaching and learning around the world has been upended in really unprecedented ways. COVID-19 has resulted in schools shut all across the world. Globally, over 1.2 billion children were out of the classroom. And in Korea, we've seen different stages of classroom environments and blended learning. And so we've seen this rapid disruption happening everywhere. As educators worldwide have sort of reinvented their practice with passion, with creativity and commitment, we've been honored to be able to do what we can to work on solutions that lighten the load of these real heroes. For example, the number of users of Google Classroom doubled from 50 million to 100 million in March alone. And since then, it's continued to grow, with a lot of that growth happening right here in the Asia Pacific region and in places like Korea. So technology has become increasingly important in this context of distance learning. Of course, many schools across the region were already in the process of digitizing, but COVID-19 really accelerated this adoption. Now, while technology alone won't fix or improve education, we are optimistic that it can be a significant part of improving educational outcomes. For context, Google for Education is a solution set built for learning and designed for the classroom. It includes easy-to-manage and affordable devices like Chromebooks, managing teaching and learning through Google Classroom, and a powerful suite of collaboration tools with G Suite for Education. In all cases, really, we focus our solutions on four key principles. The first one is that it needs to be easy to use for any user, whether that's a student, teacher, parent, administrator, and so we really focus on that ease of use in everything that we do. The second is that it needs to be flexible and scalable. So it needs to be able to adapt to different types of situations, and it needs to be able to scale such that as you expand usage of the tools, you can maintain, for example, a limited number of IT administrators to support those. The third one is that it needs to be built for collaboration. So our view is that collaboration is one of the critical skills for future jobs as well as the jobs of today. And so all of our tools are really built around a strong principle of supporting collaboration, whether people are physically in a similar located close to each other or at a distance. And then the last one, which is critical, is really secure by design. So all of our platforms are built in with significant security, and we continue to monitor and continue to evolve and strengthen that security. We've heard from many of our educators that using Google Classroom and Google Meet have really helped ease the transition to distance learning. The basics of Classroom in particular, the ability for teachers to communicate effectively with their students, to hand out work paperlessly, and to provide meaningful feedback have never been more important. And the simplicity, ease of use, and integrations of these tools with G Suite have made them approachable to many millions of new users. So as I mentioned, we know technology alone isn't the complete solution, and there were other factors that we had to consider to ensure that technology was effective in remote learning. So our approach is to build solutions that are helpful and assistive to every person in the education system. So we think a lot about our four key stakeholder groups. So these are obviously the families who need to understand the technology, understand how the teachers are using it, how students need to be using it as well. The second, obviously, is the teachers. Teachers sit at the core of everything. They need to be comfortable and confident using the technology and exploring and innovating on their own in terms of leveraging different parts of technology. The third is students, and students obviously are critical. And the tools need to be able to help them to be collaborative, to identify and create new things. What we find is students tend to pick it up very fast. And then the fourth is really IT admins, who are playing a critical role in managing these sort of growing technology ecosystems and services that are provided to students and teachers. So we really think a lot about how we can make their lives easier and how to make them more effective. So by actively listening to these four sets of stakeholders, we can then evolve our support in broadly three ways. One is obviously new product features, so thinking about how we can respond to the evolving needs of those stakeholders, to help teachers become more efficient, save them time, to make IT administrators more effective. We think about new programs, things that we can launch that can also help support at scale these different stakeholders. And then we think about training, so new distance learning types of training and other types of, for example, creativity tools, teaching training to support our teachers and our broader stakeholders. So as an example, for teachers, we're planning a series of significant updates in classroom to meet their needs in this evolving learning environment. So I'm not exaggerating when I say that we read every single piece of feedback that you send. And we've heard loud and clear that there are four significant areas where teachers need better tools. The first is knowing how students are engaging while learning at home. It's one thing to look around a classroom and see who's paying attention, who's completing a task, and it's an entirely different task to figure that out online. So to help educators with this tricky problem, we're working to help them easily understand and measure student engagement by providing stats that will help track asynchronous engagement. The second is that teaching tools should work well together. So we know educators use a wide variety of online apps to manage their classes, supporting everything from finding course materials and creating assignments to running formative assessments online. With Classroom now playing a larger and larger role in many schools, we know it's important that we support deeper integrations with the other tools you're using and rely on. So third, home and mobile internet connections aren't always reliable. So we're working on updates to Classroom that will make it work much better, even with intermittent connections. And finally, provisioning classes for an entire school system can be time-consuming for administrators. Oftentimes, this can involve thousands of students and hundreds of classes. To help, we're building tools which will make it easier to create and manage courses at scale. So if that's an example of some of the things that we're doing in terms of new product development, as an example of some of the things that we're doing in terms of new programs, for example, what we found with COVID is that it was important to ensure that teachers, parents, and students were equipped with the skills to use these tools. In some cases, the transition to online learning was rapid, with insufficient training and preparation for teachers, parents, and students alike. We therefore have launched Teach from Anywhere as a hub of information and resources to help teachers, schools, and families with remote learning during this time, with information ranging from basic questions on how to start a video call with their class for teachers to how to ensure children's online safety for parents. So we've also been working closely with groups of passionate educators, both online and, where appropriate, locally run events offline. They've been instrumental in sharing the best practices and tips proactively to other educators who might be new to teaching online. In Korea, we have a particularly active Google Educator Group community across the country, and it's growing fast as well. And as an educator, we would invite you to join one of the Google Educator Groups and really get involved. A key element of remote learning is ensuring access, and that no one gets left behind is vitally important during this time. So we look at access technology in a few different ways. Access for students with disabilities, access for students with limited access to the internet and computers, and access for underserved communities. So our tools are really designed to be accessible for as many students as possible, including students who have disabilities or require a hands-on approach in the classroom. For example, Live Transcribe, for people who are hard of hearing who might rely on lip reading, the widespread use of masks and make it hard to know what people are saying. So one helpful tool in this situation is our Live Transcribe app, which helps people get transcriptions in real time of the conversations happening around them. And this, you can see, is equally important in a classroom setting and a distance learning setting. Particularly during this distance learning environment situation, we're also trying to bring hands-on learning to students in a new way using 3D and AR content directly in Google search. So right now it's available for nearly 100 concepts covering biology, chemistry, and physics from partners like Labster, Visible Body, and more. Students, parents, and educators can now also use Lens or Socratic on their phone to quickly search for homework questions when they're stuck and need help just by taking a photo. From either Socratic or Lens, you can take a photo of the problem or equation you want to search. It can be handwritten, printed, or even on your computer screen. Similar to before, you'll see a few types of helpful results, like different ways of solving this equation, which you can tap on to see a step-by-step guide. We'll also show key concepts related to this problem, as well as similar questions and videos from the web. This also works for problems in history, chemistry, physics, and other subjects too. You can quickly search for a question or concept to get high-quality explainers and resources like you see here. We've worked hard to make these the most comprehensive homework help apps available, with the focus on helping people deeply understand the concepts they're looking up. When you have questions about the world around you, Lens can help with that too. Whether you want to identify a flower, translate text in over 100 languages, or copy handwritten notes to a computer, you can use Lens to search what you see from your camera or photo. Both apps are available today, with the new education features available in Lens and Socratic in the next few weeks, starting in English, with more languages coming soon. Now, all that I've shared, of course, cannot be done by Google or any of the private sector players alone. On the education front, we've been working closely with local ministries of education and boards of education, and we remain committed to these partnerships. It's been encouraging to see governments and the private sector come together to address the challenges brought about by this pandemic. In order for us to truly reap the benefits of technology and ensure really access for all, it's vital that policymakers and the technology industry work together towards common goals. So I'd like to share some examples from the region of how we're effectively collaborating with education systems. From a macro perspective, within APAC, and really APAC has been leading the way, we've been doing large-scale deployments across the region for G Suite and Classroom. So when we look at different places like Malaysia, we look at Philippines, some of these countries have done what we see as a single nationwide sort of tenant, so a national implementation of G Suite and Classroom. And then in the middle, we see several countries that are doing sort of state or city level structured rollouts. So Korea is a great example of that. We're working with a number of the provinces and municipalities to roll out G Suite and Classroom. We see that in India and some other countries as well. And then we see some hybrid examples, places like Singapore and elsewhere. And it's been really interesting to see how quickly that has grown. About a year and a half ago, we started with our first national deployment globally, and that was with Malaysia, so in the region, and really put Malaysia in a strong place. We set up a system as a foundation for a system called Delima, and really they were able to, through this structure, respond quite quickly to the COVID crisis. Now what we're seeing is across the region, there's been a significant number of these sort of national deployments, as well as sort of regional or state level deployments of G Suite and Classroom. And these have been great collaborations for us. For us, Classroom and G Suite are free of charge for educational institutions, but it's a really important part of our mission to be able to support these educational institutions. The other area that we think about a lot is Chromebooks, and we've seen a range of different types of deployments of Chromebooks in the region. We're seeing large one-to-one device, broader device initiatives happening. We're seeing that happen in Japan, and we're seeing that happen in Singapore with different types of models. We're also seeing in Korea a number of the provinces trying to do one-to-one deployments, either in specific schools or somewhere broadly. We think there's a lot of opportunities for really transforming education with that. We also see a number of cases with sort of shared class set models, where you might have a series of class sets of shareable devices, shareable Chromebooks oftentimes, that then different classes can use and can really support different sets of learning. So taking a step back, Chromebooks, some of you may be familiar, some may not, but basically when Google built Chrome OS and Chromebooks, we wanted to buck the trend. So traditional laptops were taking a long time to boot. They slowed down over time and required additional antivirus to help secure them. So we built Chromebooks to boot in 10 seconds and in a structure where they'll continue to boot in 10 seconds for the rest of their lives, or the rest of the lives of the devices. But more importantly, we designed the Chromebook to be extremely secure from the hardware layer all the way up to the OS layer. Now, increasingly, we're also using machine learning and federated learning to support the Chromebook capabilities. Importantly, third-party research from IDC has also found that Chromebooks with the education upgrade have resulted in total cost of ownership savings of 61%. That means that for every dollar spent, you can get twice as many Chromebooks versus other comparable devices. And that's one of the reasons that you see in places like the US, New Zealand, the Nordics, increasingly in some of the APAC markets, that Chromebooks are coming out as the leading educational tool. I think in the US it's over 60%, and we see it just being a really natural fit for the educational environment. One of the most important things that we see working with Chromebooks is the Chrome Education Upgrade, or the Chrome Management License. And really that empowers the Chromebook and IT administrators and teachers in many ways. So it provides managed access to platforms and school data. So it puts IT in control of what users can access. Managed guest sessions in kiosk mode also enable shared device use cases, for example, to showcase student work or in a library setting. So you can do things like login controls, so block end users from logging into your Chromebooks with unauthorized or personal accounts, stop them from accessing social media or other sites and content unmonitored. You can manage guest sessions, so you can enable shared identity-free sessions in libraries or other use cases where an easy no login setup is required. The Chrome Education Upgrade also simplifies the deployment of the school's Chrome devices. So Chrome Education Upgrade provides IT with access to device policies and fleet oversight capabilities, both school-issued and student-owned, all from the easy-to-use, cloud-based Google Admin Console. So for example, device policies, admins can enable and disable device policies or keep the policies set to preset defaults with confidence, and really at scale. You can have one IT administrator managing 10,000 or 100,000 devices. Printers, you can remotely deploy and configure printers for use in your organization. Networks and proxies, you can configure Wi-Fi and VPN networks for your use with your Chromebooks and your fleet. OS versions, you can pin your Chromebooks to a previous OS version and prevent updates, new versions. Chrome rolls out a new version every 6 weeks automatically in the background, so you can configure around that as well. You can do lots of device reporting, amongst other things. The Chrome Education Upgrade also provides IT with advanced security controls. So if a student or teacher misplaces their Chromebook, IT can easily disable the device, preventing potential unauthorized access to school data, or even preventing theft of the devices. Devices can also be set as ephemeral, so removing user data at the end of a session, or set up, on the other hand, with persistent enrollment to prevent unrestricted access even when the device is factory reset. So persistent enrollment, right, you can ensure devices are always enrolled to your domain, even if the device is factory reset by students trying to gain unrestricted access. So schools can safely let students take devices home to use unmonitored, right? Lost and stolen protections. So you can prevent data theft by remotely disabling devices that have been lost or stolen. You can do kiosk mode, so you can keep high-stakes testing data safe with Chromebooks set up as a single app kiosk, securing test taking and preventing students from cheating. You can do lock mode, so enable lock mode with a simple checkbox in quizzes in Google Forms and prevent students from navigating away from the quiz in their Chrome browser until they submit their answers. It's one that teachers use quite frequently. Application verified access, so you allow third-party applications to understand the managed state of a device as a requirement to provide a service. So there's a number of different features. All of this comes with the Chrome Management Upgrade, so the management license. So one country that is accelerating its one-to-one rollout, and we're seeing a lot of use of Chromebooks, is Singapore. Singapore is in the process of driving one-to-one across all secondary schools, and they've used an interesting approach where it's co-funded by the government along with what's called the EduSave account, so an account that each student has to use on educational spend. So it's partly student, and sort of family, partly government funded. Another country in the region that's been rolling out a one-to-one initiative at very significant scale and speed is Japan, where Japan is, over the course of about 12 months, putting one-to-one devices in the hands of all primary and middle school public school students. That's about 9 million devices that are going, and early indications are that Chrome is playing an important role in that deployment, and we're seeing very rapid growth in application of both G Suite and Classroom as well as Chrome as part of that program. So in sum, I guess our vision is really an education system where hundreds of thousands of students have everything they need to do their best work in a way that work for their individual needs. Our vision is for an education environment where IT admins can roll out a one-to-one device program seamlessly, scaled up to hundreds of thousands of devices. Our vision is where teachers can thrive in an open and collaborative workspace, can share information and best practices between colleagues, and students progress with parents and guardians with ease. So thank you again for listening to this presentation. Really excited about all the progress that's happening in Korea. I think I haven't been able to be up in Korea since last October or December, but once things stabilize, I look forward to coming back to Korea and hopefully meeting with some of you. And thank you again.